Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Buster Blader deck profile. So I really wanted to update this deck for you guys because a lot of you have been requesting me to update this because of the ban list. We recently lost Dragon Buster, the Destruction Sword, as a card for this deck because of Union Carrier, and it being splashed into every single deck that you could make Union Carrier in. So I figured I would go ahead and update this deck because you guys have been asking me a lot on a lot of videos. What do you change? What do you change for that card? How do you fix the deck to make it work? So I'm going to show you guys actually how to change it and make it a little bit better. And it actually is a little bit more powerful than it was before, which is kind of neat. So without further ado, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can come part of notifications, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below because you have all sorts of awesome rewards, you guys. Like getting your name description for every single video, getting signed cards in the mail, or even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron along with test hands. So without further ado, guys, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Buster Blader. So you got to play 3 copies of Buster Blader because it is basically the boss monster of the entire deck that the deck focuses around summoning. It gains 500 attack points for every dragon monster your opponent controls and is in their graveyard. Which if you're playing against Dragon Link, this card can get humongous. We then play a single copy of Buster Blader, the Destruction Swordmaster. The Destruction Swordmaster is basically just a 4th Buster Blader in the deck. Its effect never really comes up. It comes up every so often to be able to board wipe your opponent because you'll equip a monster to this and then send it to the graveyard, and it'll be like a specific like dragon typing, and it'll destroy all the dragons that are on your opponent's side of the field. We then play 3 copies of Buster Whelp, which is still single-handedly the best normal summon in the entire deck because it has the ability that when this card is normal summoned, you get to add from your deck to your hand a copy of a Buster Blader, or a copy of when this card is normal summon, you get to add a Destruction Sword card from your deck to your hand, which can be your 4th Buster Blader or another card from your deck, which is pretty cool. It also has the ability to contribute this card to special summon a Buster Blader from your hand or graveyard, or if this card's in the graveyard, you control a Buster Blader, you can discard a Destruction Sword card, and then you special summon this card. The only downside of this is you have to normal summon it to get its effect to go off. So what I kind of worked around a little bit with the Destruction Sword is I'm kind of more focusing around Wizard Buster now, because Wizard Buster kind of shuts down graveyards, which is kind of neat, and is what I'm kind of working around with to make the deck work even better. So what this card does is you get to target a Buster Blader you control, which it basically shares the exact same effect as the Buster Destruction Sword. And what it does is basically it makes it so that you can activate the effect that you can send this equipped card to the graveyard and then target a Destruction Sword monster in the graveyard except another copy of itself. But it also has the ability that you can target a Buster Blader you control and equip this card from your hand or your side of the field of that monster. And while this card is equipped to a monster, monsters your opponent control, monsters in your opponent's graveyard cannot activate their effects. So it pretty much is an Abyss Dweller, pretty much, which is really cool and is why I like playing this card as a 1-of in the deck. I don't really need more than 1 because you're never really gonna equip it anymore, but there is different weird ways that you can kind of shut down depending on what your opponent's playing with. We then play 3 copies of the Txne Spirit Atahara. Atahara, it was really helpful in the deck because you just special summon it during the first turn to be able to give you an additional monster to use as a material for a Link summon or a Synchro summon, depending on what you're going for. We then play 3 copies of Jester Ko-Fi. Jester Ko-Fi just special summons itself from your hand in attack position. Its effect really doesn't matter outside of that to give you an additional monster on your side of the field to be able to use as Link material. We then play 1 copy of Red Eyes Black Dragon and a single copy of Dark Magician because we did bump Dragoons into this deck because it makes the deck a little bit better and it helps it give that extra oomph behind it when you use with the Dragon Buster being banned, or the Destruction Sword being banned. It helps out a lot to be able to go into Dragoons, and I only play 1 in the entire extra deck, because what I normally do in this deck now is I'll summon my copy of Dragoons going first with Anaconda, with using, say, for example, a copy of Jester and Txne Spirit, or normal summoning my Buster Whelp, and then special summoning a copy of Jester Ko-Fi, or special summoning Atahara, and then normal summoning my Whelp, Link summoning into a copy of Anaconda, paying my 2,000, going into a copy of for example, a copy of Dragoons, hold the Dragoons on my side of the field, and have the trap set to go ahead and lock my opponent down the next turn with the lock of the Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman, and the copy of the Buster Dragon on my side of the field as well, which makes the deck really crazy because you have a negation to protect it as well. I basically just use Dragoons to protect the trap. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. And the really cool thing is you're actually able to play like Buster Blader, Dark Magician, and Red Eyes in the same deck. I did this before kind of with a Dark Paladin deck, and if you want to play Dark Paladin in the extra deck, you can. I'm not, but you can play Dark Paladin in the extra deck. So we're going to go ahead and play a single copy of Monster Reborn because it can bring back your cards from the graveyard, which is super helpful to bring back certain monsters from the graveyard. Play a single copy of Foolish Burial because it can send cards to the graveyard that we need in the graveyard as quickly as possible. One copy of Red Eyes Fusion because you use Red Eyes Fusion to go into your copy of the Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, which is a really, really good extra deck monster and fusion negation to protect your plays. Play the same copy of 1-for-1 because it can help you get your level 1s out of the deck faster. One copy of the Destruction Sword Fusion helps you go into fusion plays. It comes up pretty frequently actually to use this card because you get to fusion summon one monster that lists Buster Blader as a material from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or your side of the field, or either side of the field as a material, which is pretty helpful because if your opponent's playing dragons, then you can just use it to summon the Destruction Swordsmaster or Destruction Swordman because it requires a dragon and a Buster Blader. I wish they'd make us another boss monster for Buster Blader that had like Spellcaster, or well, we do because you have what's it called? You have Dark Paladin, but something else that would give us something that was generic like the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. We then play a single copy of Called by the Grave because Called by the Grave stops our opponent from hitting us with hand traps. Magical Midbreak Field, kind of the same thing. It makes it so it kind of helps us protect against certain hand traps, which is kind of cool, with the ability to activate this card at the beginning of your main phase 1 or 2, and then during either player's main phase 1, monsters on the field cannot be destroyed by their opponent's card effects, which is the really cool effect that it kind of protects your cards on your side of the field. We play a single copy of Instant Fusion. Instant Fusion gives you Millenniumize Restrict really easily, and that's pretty much it for the one-ofs. We play a lot of one-of spell cards in this deck. We play 3 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. Goods is really good in this deck because it lets you send a spell or trap from your deck to the graveyard, which is always going to be a trap of the copy of Destruction Sword Memories. Maybe sometime Destruction Sword Flash. It kind of depends on the situation. Play 3 copies of Where Arfdal because, as you notice, we play a lot of level 1 monsters in the deck, and this card helps you search your copy of Buster Whelp because if you draw into Jester Comfy or Otahara, then you special summon them to your side of the field, activate this, and then grab from your deck a copy of your Buster Whelp from the deck to give you essentially 6 copies of your Buster Whelp. And it helps out a lot too because if you don't normal summon the monster, you take 2,000. If you don't normal summon that monster, so you normally want to normal summon that copy of Buster Whelp, which is why I usually only use this to search that card. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Destruction Sword Flash. Destruction Sword Flash is a really good trap card in this deck that has the ability that if you control a fusion summon monster that lists Buster Blader as a material, you can banish all monsters your opponent controls, and then when a card or effect is activated that targets a Buster Blader monsters you control except another copy of itself, except during the damage step, you can banish this card from your graveyard, negate the effect, and you destroy that card. So it's pretty good to be able to help you just negate cards on the field, to be able and totally board wipe and banish everything on your opponent's side of the field is really nice as well. And then play 2 copies of Destruction Sword Memories. The graveyard effect is the main one that you're going to be using because the field effect of when you activate this card is kind of not the greatest because what it does is you discard a card and then you can special summon a Buster Blader monster from your deck. It just special summons a Buster Blader directly from the deck. It's good, but at the same time, it's kind of lackluster. You really want to use it for its fusion effect in the graveyard because you banish this card from your graveyard to fusion summon a Buster Blader, the Destruction Swordsman, from your extra deck by banishing the materials from your graveyard. So essentially, if you activate Prologue and then you send this and another monster from your deck to the graveyard and you already have Buster Whelp in the grave, then you essentially have your Buster lock on your side of the field, which is pretty cool. So speaking of Prologue, we're going to be playing 3 copies of that in the main deck as well. This card is absolutely insane. It's probably the best card in the entire deck and makes the entire deck work because what this card does is you send a copy of a Destruction Sword and a Buster Blader monster from your deck to the graveyard, except another copy of itself, and then you can special summon a Buster Dragon from your extra deck, which Buster Dragon makes everything a dragon on your side of the field and your opponent's side of the field, which makes Buster Blader, the Destruction Swordsman, negate every single monster's effects that you're on your opponent's side of the field, which is insanely good. And it just helps you get those out from the deck. So basically what you do is you set this card. This deck works off of 2 cards. If you normal summon Buster Whelp, search this, set it, and then on your opponent's turn, flip it, or link summon the Linkuriboh first to get your Buster Whelp in the graveyard. Go into this, and then set this, activate it, send a copy of Buster Blader, send a copy of the Destruction Sword Memories to the graveyard, and then immediately banish this Enchain to this after it sends for cost. You banish your copy of the Buster Blader and a copy of the Buster Whelp from the graveyard, and it lets you fusion summon directly into a copy of the Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman, and a copy of Buster Dragon to get you basically both your boss monsters on your side of the field, which if you go into Anaconda during first turn, you get a copy of Dragoons, Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman, and a copy of Buster Dragon on your side of the field instantly, which is really cool. So, we then play 3 copies of Trap Trick in the deck too. Trap Trick is probably one of the best cards in the entire deck because it lets you play 6 copies of Prologue in the deck, which is what makes the deck entirely work and is why you have to play this card as a 3-of in this deck. You need 3 Trap Trick, you need 3 Prologue because it just makes the deck work, and that's why you play these as 2-ofs each, because you can send you banish one and then, or send one, and then you can go directly into one of these set on your side of the field, but you can only activate 1 trap effect for the rest of the turn on the field, so it's not that big of a deal either. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 of the big boss monster himself, which is 2 copies of Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. So this card is really good, and is basically how the entire deck works, is you're going to be using this card to basically have the ability, it can attack directly, and it gains 1,000 attack and defense for each dragon type monster your opponent controls and is in their graveyard. And changes all dragon monster your opponent controls to defense position, and also all dragon monsters in your opponent's possession cannot activate their effects. And if this card attacks a defense position monster, it inflicts piercing damage. So it gets pretty big, and it's a really awesome card. This card literally takes it literally takes Dragon Link for a total loop, and they can't get out of this card. We then play 2 copies of Buster Dragon. Buster Dragon is really good because it can, all monsters on the field become dragon type monsters. And then once per turn, if you don't control a Buster Blader, then you can target a Buster Blader in your graveyard and special summon it back to your side of the field. Then once per turn, during your opponent's turn, you can target a Buster Blader monster you control and equip it with a Destruction Sword card from your graveyard. And it's a quick effect as well, which is pretty good. We then play a copy of Protector Whelp of the Destruction Sword. I just play this as 1 of in the deck because if this card is link summon, you can send a Destruction Sword card from your deck to the graveyard, and then you can special summon a Buster Blader monster from your hand, which is kind of helpful as well. And at the end of the battle phase, if your opponent controls no monsters, you can target 1 Buster Blader monster you control that didn't declare an attack this turn and make that monster, make it so your opponent loses attack or loses life points equal to the monster's attack. So if you control this and it couldn't attack directly and they won't summon a monster, you can link into this and then hit them for however much attack points he has. So it kind of works around his he can't attack directly effect. You play a single copy of Dragoons because you want to go into Dragoons pretty frequently in this deck to be able to kind of protect your lock to go into your copies of Prologue. I just really use it for the negation effect. You do get the 2 pops as well, which kind of ends games faster, but at the same time, I usually go first in this deck, so it helps me just summon this as like a towers, and they can't get past it, and they kind of want to get rid of this more than they want to get rid of this, and then they don't underestimate this, and then they can't get rid of this because this is locking them out, which is kind of cool. And then play a single copy of Millenniumize Restrict, because Millenniumize is really good to prevent your opponent from hitting you at the same time while you're trying to go into your Dragoons. So you use this to get Dragoons, and then you use Dragoons to get this, because this protects to get Dragoons, and then this gets out on your opponent's turn. We then play a single copy of Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. Our Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss, you go into this card with Buster Dragon and a tuner monster, which is really nice. 1 copy of Borreload Savage. Borreload Savage you just make really easily with a lot of the link monsters in the deck to be able to get you additional negations. 1 level 1 tuner and a Buster Blader goes directly into this card. 1 copy of Appaloosa. I really wish I would have played this in the last profile because it helps out a lot in the deck, and getting out 4 monsters on the field in this deck is not hard, especially with being able to link climb with a lot of the cards in this deck. You don't do it all that often, but it's really nice to have. We then play a single copy of Access Code because it gives you additional pops on the field, Unicorn because it spins stuff, Phoenix because it pops spells and traps, Anaconda because it helps you go into your copy of the Buster Blader or Dragoons in this deck, and a single copy of Link Rebo because Link Rebo can go in with literally any of your level 1 monsters you can make with Link Rebo, and it helps if you normal summon Buster Whelp and then link the Buster Whelp away after you search Prologue to go into Link Rebo, because then it's preventing your opponent from attacking into the Dragoons if they summon something bigger and you haven't established the Buster Blader yet, or they negate the Buster Blader past the Dragoons, you still have the protection of the Link Rebo with the Red Eyes Dark Dragoons, because usually the only way they're going to out it is to swing over it. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to play with. It's actually turning into probably one of my favorite nostalgic decks to play around, just because you can summon this really awesome card that blanket affects the field to be able to negate all the monsters on the field's effects, which is kind of neat. So anyways, guys, this is Dark Armed Duels. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can come to our notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon in the description below because we have all those awesome rewards for you guys, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.